Hi, I'm Douglas Bell, and we're here ringing the bell on Untold Stories focused on the intersection of art, social justice, and the human spirit. There was a 2020 report from the National Endowment of Arts stating that more than a quarter of adult readers are people of color. In that same report, more than three-quarters of the publishing industry is either run and are promoting white authors. Today, if you are interested in the publishing industry, if you're interested in literature, then you're going to love the guest I have for you today. She is a Houstonian. She is the co-founder and the executive director of Bloomsday Literary. Bloomsday Literary is a Houston nonprofit publisher focused on publishing bold and beautiful books from marginalized authors with the mission of transforming us and inspiring us to act. I'd like to introduce my special guest, Kate Martin-Williams.
Thanks for having me, Troy. It's such a pleasure to be here and be able to talk books with you today.
Yeah, so how you doing?
I mean, I'm good. It's a cold Saturday morning, but I'm good.
Well, you know, it gets cold in Houston. You know, Houston is known for its cold weather.
For sure. That's right.
So, okay, so you're a Houstonian.
Yes, that's right.
And you started Bloomsday Literary, what, maybe 5 years ago?
Right. 2018, we started. We actually started as a for-profit press. I can tell you a little backstory about us. It's three co-founders, so myself, Fu Lu, also from Houston, and then Jessica Cole, who is actually in Boston. We're all good buddies. We've been interested in books for a long time, and we just started noticing that within sort of the writing services community, which is where we started, we were not getting access to the books that we wanted to read. So our very first poet is a Vietnam War veteran, and Fu had met him, and they had started talking about his career as a poet. But he'd won an Iowa Prize, which is a big deal in the poetry world, for a single poem that he wrote, and here he is in his 60s, and he didn't have a collection of poems published.
Okay.
And we just really wanted for that to be in the world,
right?
Because we knew who he was, and we loved his work. And I always joke that Fu is kind of our 3D printer. Jess and I dream these big ideas, and he 3D prints them.
He makes them happen.
He makes them happen.
Okay.
And so he said, "Well, if it's not here, let's make it. Let's do it. Let's make the book." And so that's how the press was born. That was 2018. We started in 2017, and the book came out in 2018.
Okay.
And we've been working at it ever since.
So, Bloomsday Literary. You know, when I first met, I think I've never actually asked you this question, but how did you come up with Bloomsday Literary?
Oh, well, I mean, that's another story too. We Fu and I met early. I was in my 20s, and we started a book club.
Okay.
A friend of mine. I've been in the same book club since I was 20-something, and we read. Our goal was to read a chapter of Ulysses each time we met.
Okay.
Okay, the James Joyce novel. Some say the greatest novel ever. And so we started this book club. There were about 20 people in it. Fu was in it.
Okay.
And the first meeting, everybody showed up. We met at Harp on, I think it's on...
Harp?
Harp, it was a bar in Montrose.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on Richmond, or maybe it's West
Okay.
Alabama.
I don't know that place.
It's an Irish pub,
Okay.
We're keeping with the Irish vibe, and we met, and everybody had a great time. The second week, I mean, it was probably a couple weeks later, but it was the second meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We were down to 3 people.
Okay.
Because nobody got through the second chapter.
Okay.
So anyway, long story short, we by the end of the club, there was just 2 of us.
Just 2 of you
who finished the book. And the
so you got through it.
We got through it.
Okay.
Yeah, the 2 of us. It was not Fu, but we don't have to tell anybody.
Okay.
But the book celebrates. It's a very long book, and it's about Leopold Bloom. And every year in Ireland, they celebrate Bloomsday as a day to celebrate literature, celebration of great literature.
Oh, okay.
And so when we were conceiving of the name, I thought about, just those sort of. It takes a lot of work to appreciate good literature and to be in the book world, and so
Okay.
that's
interesting.
Yeah.
So you all are a nonprofit, 501c. When I started this episode, this segment on your introduction, I talked about the publishing world and the people running it. So you have a board.
Yes. Yeah.
Is your board what is your board made out of? How are you ensuring that your leadership, I guess in a lot of ways, is not not being hampered or caught under the same, I guess, issues of the larger publishing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll start by just sort of setting the scene for where we are in the literary ecosystem right now, if I can, and then explain how our board fits into that ecosystem. So, and you brought up a great statistic about what is going on in traditional publishing these days. So, and I'll add to that by saying there was the NEA actually was part of another sort of effort to really kind of unpack what is happening in publishing. And there was it's called the Lee and Low Diversity Survey, where they actually looked at the number of authors of color being published from 1950 to 2018. So it's a big swath of time. And in those 68 years, only 5% of authors published by traditional publishing were people of color.
Really?
Yeah. And that's not even counting other marginalized communities, right? We haven't said anything about LGBTQ authors or disabled authors or veteran authors.
Now, does that include women?
Yes. Yeah.
That 5% did or did not include women? It did. Okay.
But the point is that if we leave traditional publishing to their own devices, we have to ask the question: what stories are we not getting access to?
Correct.
Right. They are not policing themselves.
That's true.
They're not very. What we can see from this survey is that they haven't been very good stewards of the art that they've been asked to publish and distribute to 1/4. What did you say? How many percentage?
It said more than 3/4. More than 1/4 of all readers are people of color. Of adult readers are people of color.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And we only represent 5%, or people of color only represent 5% of those authors that published. So the independent publishing community, other mission-driven presses like ours, comes in as 501c3 funded organizations to try to make a dent, to try to move that needle. I have a good friend, a consultant that we've had working with us for a while, who calls that from the margins to the center.
Okay.
Right? The mission is to sort of pull us in so that we have access to all of these voices.
From the margins to the center.
From the margins to the center.
Okay.
Yeah, she has a conference that she runs, and that's their mission. That's what they talk about in the literary community. And I love that vision. I think that's a great way to think about what indie houses are doing, indie presses are doing, to try to, just kind of keep knocking on the door and saying, hey, like, we deserve more. We deserve access to more stories. Whether you're a person of color or a white person or an underprivileged person or whatever, we deserve to see all of that in the stories that we read.
Correct.
And so that was that sort of led us as Bloomsday to reroute and go the nonprofit route to try to tap into some of the arts funding that is out there for mission-driven work. And the great thing about this city is that we're a hugely diverse city.
Yes, we are. But your board is a very diverse board that you have.
And that was intentional.
That was intentional, such that you don't find yourself being kind of, I guess, backed into that same corner, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Looking at the website, one thing I noticed on the website, there was discussion about making the author or recentering the author as the focus of the book business versus maybe money. I don't know how else to say that, but yes, I mean, so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I will. I would say, I mean, I listened to a podcast where the tagline is it was capitalism all the time, all along.
Right.
It's been capitalism all along. And I think that for a long time, if you think about books as a product,
okay,
then you're going to attach the profit, the bottom line as your sort of main objective.
Correct. You mean if it's only seen as a book?
Yeah, as a product.
Yeah, as a product.
Right.
Okay.
We like to think of it as a piece of art.
Yes.
And then the artist becomes the center of that.
Okay.
And so what we say is, we're trying to destroy the distance between the author and the reader. And if you're constantly thinking about the bottom line, that sort of straight line gets more like this.
Okay.
Right? You've got to go through your edit. You got to go through your marketing board and your editorial board and ask them, like, what is it that we can market this year? I mean, there's that story about there were a couple YA books that had done really well in a few years ago. And one of them was Angie Thomas's book, the name of which I'm completely blanking on. But she was with a big publishing house, and they had just done really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so another person came in, it was a Black author, a male this time.
Uh-huh.
No, it was another Black female author who had a YA book that had nothing to do with the first one.
Okay.
It was a very different plot line,
right.
Totally different. And the people in this room making the decision about whether they were going to accept this book that later went on to win prizes,
right,
and, to much critical acclaim, they said, we already have our Black girl author.
Oh. So that's the way it works.
So that's the
way it works.
Y'all. Yeah, one a year, and so that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of decisions that are made before, who are deciding what readers get to read those books.
Right.
And we'd like to sort of shorten that distance.
So I like that term, from the margins to the center, and I like the way you connected this idea that because you're only looking at the bottom line, you've kind of excluded all the other reasons why the art exists. And I think when I was reading about you guys on the website and everything, it really seems like you're really putting forth a real effort to really elevate these voices that I think no one even knew even existed. And you're giving these voices a platform to be seen and be heard.
We're trying.
Yeah. But
I will say one more thing too.
Okay.
Can I hit pause for 1 second? The other piece about a traditional publishing house, and it's not a monolith. It's easy for me to get down on them. There are a lot of imprints in those 5 traditional publishing houses that do really good work.
Okay.
So I'll say that as a caveat. But statistics are the statistics.
Correct.
Another piece that was commissioned on this study of the publishing industry, and specifically diversity in the publishing industry, that Lee and Low diversity survey I was talking about, said that 3 to 5% of the traditional publishing houses' budget is allotted to marketing. 3 to 5%.
3 to 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we all know that's not going to work.
That's not,
yeah. Anybody making books know that it's not going to work. Yeah.
No, because what are we doing right now? We're talking about books. We're busting our behinds.
Correct.
We talk about celebrated authors who we want you to know about.
Correct.
And what it looks like in traditional publishing circles is that they'll say, these are the 4 books this year that we want to sink our money into.
Mm-hmm.
This tiny piece of our money into these 3 or 4 books, and we're gonna play it safe. because we're not going to take risks with this money.
Right.
Colleen Hoover did really well last year, and she's got another book out. So here you go,
Colleen.
We're gonna,
right.
And if you enjoy Colleen Hoover, that's great. But I'm just saying, if all that money is going to her
Mm-hmm.
or to that book or James Patterson or, any of the trusted, 20 authors, is sort of like the top tier authors who have proven themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a mid-list author competing against those folks who have the budget, you're up against the wall.
Right.
You got a lot of work ahead
Right.
of you.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Again, we're just knocking on the door.
We're just knocking on the door.
Hoping.
But I think about Houston. Houston, the most diverse city in the country.
Yeah. If you believe the Kinder Institute.
Which I do, I have to go with it.
Yeah.
So we have a food scene, we have the symphony, the opera. We're known for our art scene, but I don't think a lot of people realize that Houston has a big writing scene. Is that why you chose to start at Bloomsday in Houston?
We definitely wanted to think about Houston and have people start thinking about Houston as a literary arts city.
Mm.
And so it was fortunate that we live here.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I moved back to the city for a lot of reasons, but one of those reasons was that it is so diverse, and we wanted our kids to experience the city for what it is, and that access to all kinds of culture, literary arts being one of them.
Right.
This city boasts the second most prestigious university for graduate studies in creative writing at U of H, University of Houston.
See, I don't think most people would know that. See, I don't think most people know that's the case.
Right. That's what I mean. So we have lots of. The roots here are deep.
So is the University of Houston telling people this? Because I don't think that is common knowledge. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think creative writers know.
Okay.
They for sure know.
Okay.
But if you stopped Houstonian on the streets in downtown,
right.
I don't think they would. Bloomsday is trying to push us along so that we can be, another sort of jewel in that crown.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's Imprint is another nonprofit here in Houston that does huge work for the literary arts. We've got a slate of authors that comes through via Imprint that you only have to spend $5 to go see them in a theater, talk about their books. And these are big literary names that are coming through the city. We've got Kaveh Akbar, who's coming February 1st. I keep saying we. It's not we. It's Imprint. But I'm excited to go see them. And Ben Fountain, two fantastic authors. And Imprint foots the bill for that. And people from all over the city go see these authors. They had Lauren Groff this season and Tommy Orange. So we've got lots happening.
Yeah, there is a lot happening. You just need to talk about it. Okay, so we are ringing a bell on the untold story. That is what we are doing.
Yeah. And I like the piece you said about it being that social justice is tied up in that.
Oh, definitely. I don't know how you can disconnect the two. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a social justice, a piece to this. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that you all are not scared to jump into that water. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I don't know if I can say this or not, but you and Jessica, y'all are two white females. So so what's going on here? So what struck you all?
Well, like I said, we weren't seeing the books that we wanted to read.
Okay.
We can't, Jessica's parents were in the Peace Corps. I've been swimming in these waters for a long time. I think there's those are the stories that I enjoy reading. I have, I think curiosity is one of my driving forces. I just came wired like that.
Right.
So I've always been kind of interested in what I don't know.
Okay.
And so I would say curiosity, and then that leads to connection.
Mm-hmm.
if you're curious about the person sitting next to you,
Mm-hmm.
what comes after that is connection.
Correct.
And that's why I love reading, and I think I find connection with other folks who feel the same way
Right.
about reading.
Right.
And that's the community I want to build. I mean, that's why I'm buddies with Fu. Like, we see it the same way,
Mm-hmm.
even though we look very different and we come from very different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't, if I wasn't curious, if he wasn't curious about my story, none of this would be happening.
Correct.
Yeah, it's
Correct.
it's the same way we met.
Yeah,
Right?
that is so true. That is so true. So at this point now, Bloomsday Literary has published what, 4 books, 5 books?
4 books.
4
and
books.
Our 5th is forthcoming in
So
June.
tell me, give us a quick rundown on the first 4 books there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thumbnail sketch.
Yes.
Micro machine.
Yes.
Style. I don't know if I can do micro machine, man. I'm dating myself, but so we started with D.E.E.P. Brown, who is a Houstonian. He's a transplant, like lots of Houstonians, but he's been here, I think, 30 plus years.
Okay.
And his collection was our inaugural title, and he's a Vietnam War vet, and his poetry is about kind of confronting what it means to live in a world, a post Vietnam War world, with that background, informing a lot of what happened to him after the war, and what it means to live in a society that doesn't want to confront what that looks like.
Right.
So beautiful and haunting poems in that book. And then we went to Deborah D.E.E.P. Mouton, who I count as a dear friend of mine. She was the first Black female poet laureate in our city, and had a gorgeous collection of poems that she had sent to several publishers. It didn't get much traction.
Really?
And then we connected because we invited her on the podcast. And I said, about that manuscript, can we have a look at that? She was like, are you publishing? I said, yes. And we looked at it, and there's no way we were going to say no to that.
Correct. I love Deborah.
She's great.
Yeah.
And so hers is a collection of poems about sort of the violence against Black bodies that was occurring. This came out in 2019.
Okay.
And so she had some connections to Sandra Bland at A&M University, and so a lot of the poems were they're all set in distances from her house.
Okay.
Where these tragedies were happening, with police brutality and young African Americans.
Yes.
And so that's where that book came out, and then we met Jabari Asim, who is a Boston professor of creative writing at Emerson University, and he'd been writing for a long time. He wrote a really stunning collection of essays called "We Can't Breathe," and then had a book of poetry that we were lucky enough to publish in 2020. Just right when BLM was taken off. It just happened to coincide at the same time, because this is these are the things that poets were thinking about and working on. And then just this year we published.
Well, that was Stop and Frisk.
That was Stop.
That was Stop. So that last book, I just want to be clear, that was Stop and Frisk, which was a beautiful book of poetry. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was a very deep, very, very, very thought-provoking. It really made you stop and go. It was very relatable. You kind of go, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. So your next one?
And so then this year we published Victorio Victoriano Cardenas' Portraits as Animal. And his experience is, his collection is about his experience as a trans man who is also indigenous and grew up in New Mexico. And it's a gorgeous collection about intergenerational trauma that gets passed down, and as Jessica wrote in the copy for that book, it's really about transitions of all kinds.
Right.
There's a lot of eco poetry in that collection that talks about the transitions this planet is going through as a result of our living in it and on it. And so, and it's a gorgeous book too. Yeah. Couldn't be more proud of all of them.
Yeah, no, that was a beautiful bit of poetry as well too. So you've got, and so your latest book is?
So in June, we have a new book coming out from a Palestinian American woman whose name is Rema Ruman. I'm so excited for this novel. The title is TBD. So we have okay. A little bit of editorial work on that.
Okay.
But just know that it's coming out in June, and you're gonna and it's our first novel. So it's our
yes, because Bloomsday at this point has been 100% focused on poetry.
That's correct.
But now you guys are looking to kind of diversify and continue doing poetry, but also branch out into fiction. Anything else? Or do you have any other interests possibly?
Oh my gosh. Well, creative nonfiction. I love a good essay collection.
Okay.
But I think, my next goal or little dream would be to publish some YA.
Okay.
I've got 2 middle and high school age girls at home, and I know that kids are hungry for diverse YA.
Right.
And not trauma-based narratives, just a variety of people experiencing life.
Correct.
Wherever they are.
Correct.
And there aren't a lot of indie houses that publish YA. A lot of that is still sort of within the realm of traditional publishing, and so I'd love to sort of have a piece of our catalog be dedicated to YA readers, because I think young people are hungry for it.
So is there a reason that you're aware of as to why nonprofits or small indie presses are staying away from it?
If you look at the last 10 years of independent publishing, we've really all had to specialize because the budgets are going like this.
Okay.
And the staff is going like this. It's hard to pay for the work that we do.
Okay.
Because especially if you're author centered, right? We're raising money to pay our authors equitable wages for their work.
Correct.
We want to have advances that are competitive with traditional publishing so that they want to stay with us. I think a lot of the reason that authors go to traditional publishing is because they can offer them an advance.
Correct. But there are things that come along with that.
Oh yeah.
But for what it's worth, I do kind of want to touch it a little bit now since you said that.
Sure.
So yes, we're all fighting to be picked up by a traditional publisher, but and maybe on the surface that's a obvious pro.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
But what is the unspoken cons to that?
Okay. Well,
and I'm not trying to bash and say anything. I'm just saying there's just some realities to it.
And I think you could get any Big 5 author in here, and they would say the same thing
that
I'm about to say.
Okay.
What is the marketing that they're going to put behind it? It used to, in the old days, you'd get one of these deals, and then you could count on a book tour, and those publishing houses would send you to various cities, their connections to bookstores, and you could count on doing book tours.
Okay.
And they would do the heavy lifting.
Right.
Marketing.
Right.
But you're not going to sign an author these days and count on a book tour. You're not going to have a ton of marketing, as I said before, if they're only putting 3 to 5% of their budget into marketing. They're going to ask you as the author, what does your website look like? How many Instagram followers do you have?
Correct.
What,
Yes.
How many festivals are you going to?
Correct.
We've heard a lot of sad stories about what happens, and sometimes the author pays to go on a book tour, and then their books don't show up there. They're not even.
Because they just weren't.
It wasn't high on the list, right?
Yes.
And maybe it was an oversight.
Maybe it was oversight. The world isn't perfect.
No, it's not. But if I have a relationship with my author, and my author says, "Hey, I'm going to the LA Book Fest." It's on me to make sure those books show up.
Correct.
And that they can sell them in the store at the
Correct.
festival. And and that's part of being author-centered.
Well, and I like to add this also too. I think a lot of us authors have coming to this, us new authors at least, have come into this not realizing maybe the cost of entry. I don't know how. I don't. And when I say the cost of entry, I mean, like, for instance, having the website already up and running and working, and having a social media presence already up and working.
Right.
I think a lot of new authors do not step into that, not really realizing what is needed, even if you don't even have the traditional publisher with you. It just is needed in this world. You just can't get around that.
Yeah. I mean, if we're looking at the latest stat I saw, which is outdated at this point, I'm sure the number's even higher, is that there's 8,000 books a month published in this country. That's discrete ISBNs.
Okay, I didn't think it was as high. I thought it was more like 2 or 3,000.
No, 8. And that was in
Okay.
2016 or something. 2017, I think. You can look it up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crowded marketplace.
it's a crowded marketplace.
And so, it's an it's fair that the big four is like, look, you're gonna have to do some
Yeah. Yeah,
heavy
no,
lifting
yeah.
because it's a crowded marketplace
Yeah.
out there.
That's
So
true.
how do you shout out your book when all these other voices are shouting out theirs? It's constant.
Correct.
It's a constant question. But if we can, the way I answer that is that we're developing a brand with Bloomsday so that people start associating Bloomsday with books that they like,
Right.
that they want to read. This
Correct.
is sort of the cultural conversation
Correct.
that we're
Correct.
working on.
Correct.
This is the sort of section of the conversation that we sort of swim in. Then I think that helps to drive people to our authors.
But and also too, because of the authors that you are picking up and looking at, and because generally there is a cultural component to it, there is a social component to it. I think that also could also be a bigger driver for those wanting to see that these things are being talked about in the arts, where maybe with some other people or other publishers is being more clamped down.
Yeah, right.
So I do.
We only have space for one.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think that's important to really be to say that out loud, that it is about good solid writing and good solid work here, the craft. But there's also a matter of a balance of that larger statement that's being made.
Right.
And
And that's a tough part of our job, I
Correct.
think, too, is like, there's a lot of good writing out there. But what, Bloomsday is trying to do is sort of make sure that the folks that come into the Bloomsday family are all part of this same conversation, so that our books can sit on the shelf together.
Correct.
And sort of have conversation with each other.
Correct.
And that's like, we're not trying to solve all of publishing's
No.
problems, but again, it's just like, can we move from the edges more to the center? Here? And that is not my phrase. That's Alison Meyer's phrase, and she's fantastic.
Hey, I love it. I hope she'll let us borrow it, because I love it.
Credit where credit is due, because she's and I think that's true with indie houses, is that we don't compete against other indie houses.
Correct.
We all have our own missions.
Correct.
And we're trying to support each other in the process to
Correct.
make it possible to read more widely.
Right. A little bit of a challenge here. If you could choose a world of, I don't know, waiting for that one author who you think could be, like, I don't know, I'm making this up, like a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah.
Or have this cadre of curated artists that you are supporting and moving this. What would you choose?
If I had to choose between them.
If you had to choose between the two, what would you?
I'm a complicated person.
Okay.
Troy.
Okay. And I'm gonna leave that alone too.
I'm gonna say both. I don't think that those two things are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of an outmoded way of thinking about what we can do here. Like, I think it's possible for us to have a fellowship of authors who support one another, and also do high quality work
Right.
that could garner those prizes. I mean, we were on our third book, and Jabari Asim won a pushcart
Mm-hmm.
prize for one of his poems, which is a coveted prize in the independent press world. It's a poetry prize that's awarded once a year to 20 of the best poems that come out that year.
Okay.
Which was significant for us.
Right.
And says that we can have both.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other presses. There's a press I admire in the UK called Fitzcarraldo, and they aren't that old. They aren't that much older than we are.
Okay.
They're about 10 years old. They have very beautifully told books, and they've already, I think, 3 of the last 5 Nobels have come from this press.
Oh, really?
I could be wrong. It could be 1 Nobel and 3 Booker Awards.
Well, yeah, but still.
They're an award-winning press.
Correct.
That's doing good work, on a small budget in a small house.
Mm-hmm.
And the authors are showing up and supporting them, which is really heartening to me, that those authors are staying with them, because they're like, they love what's going on there. They
Right.
believe that the press believes in them and will support them. And so excited to be in the same conversation with them, doing the same kind of work.
Mm-hmm. So, well, this might be a tough question, but so what's the future for Bloomsday Literary? I mean, you talked about YA. Now you've kind of you all are fraying into kind of the contemporary fiction place or creative fiction, but where would you like to see yourselves?
I think we've got a great opportunity in this city, which we sort of touched on before, because it's such an arts forward city, and we are a charitable city. There are a lot of folks in this city who give to the arts, which is why it's so vibrant.
Correct.
And so I think the next year for us looks like doing the things that we need to do as an organization to stay sustainable, which is why we had a consultant on board talking to us about the things we can learn from indie presses that have been around for a long time, the things we can learn from indie presses who have been innovating and disrupting, and sort of what we can do to sustain this work. Because our dream long term is to be able to offer our authors, a $20,000 advance, which is unheard of in independent circles.
Okay.
To start sort of really paying our authors so that that money can be used for that author to write the next book.
Okay.
Because when you publish your first book of poetry, I mean, every single one of those authors has a day job.
Correct.
They're writing at 10 p.m. after
Yes.
their kids go to bed. They're writing at 5 a.m.
Yes. Yes.
We would like to be able to change that sort of ecosystem so that a debut author, a debut poet, a debut novelist can have a little cushion so that they have a little more freedom to let the creative juices flow. And that sort of thing, to be able to dream big like that, depends on sort of diversifying our revenue, because the margins on book sales are pretty slim.
They can be at times.
And so we'd like for donors to get on board, and some of the arts communities here, the arts organizations, we've depended on grants before, and we're grateful to the Houston Arts Alliance and to Humanities Texas, who has graciously granted us with some of these arts funds that allow us to do the publication. But we're thinking next level. We'd like to offer fellowships to our authors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for being with us, Kate. I want to thank you to the listeners if you stayed with us this long. I want to say thank you. We have had a short but deep conversation about the publishing industry and what's kind of going on in it, and how Bloomsday Literary is looking to recenter artists as in the book business instead of just profits. So Thank you for being with us. I'm Douglas Bell, and we have just finished ringing the bell. Thank you.